A nested loop exists when the body of a loop statement is another loop. Like all loops, it is important to appropriately and purposefully set a nested loop's parameters. Here's an example of a multiplication table made with nested for loops. Note that for each iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop is executed in its entirety. This code will print a total of 10 rows because the outer loop iterates from 1 to 10. And you can see that each row will print a total of 10 numbers, since the inner loop also iterates from 1 to 10. Inside the inner for loop, an int variable named num is initialized. Notice the value it is initialized to is I times j. What does this mean? It means that when the first row is printed, I will equal 1, and as the inner loop iterates, I will be multiplied by 1 first, then by 2, then by 3, and so forth, until it is multiplied by 10. At that point, the inner loop has reached its terminating condition, and the flow jumps out of the loop and to this print line statement, going to the next line after the first 10 numbers were printed. This print line statement is what will give us the row effect when everything is printed to the console. Now after the print line statement, the flow returns to the top of the outer for loop as the terminating condition has not been met yet. At this point, I equals 2 when the inner loop is encountered for a second time. With the I times j expression, the second line will contain all multiples of 2, and the next row will contain all multiples of 3 as the outer loop counts up, and so forth. In the end, we will have a multiplication table containing all multiples from 1 to 10. So if we run this program, we can see the first row has the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The second row has the values 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on, the multiples of 2. And as you work your way down the table, you can see that this does indeed display all multiples from 1 to 10. This is great and hopefully gives you a good idea of the basic but great potential of computer programs. However, right now the numbers are all smashed together and it is somewhat hard to decipher what it is. And most importantly, you really can't use this like you would a normal multiplication table, as it would be pretty difficult to trace a number up and down since the columns do not align. Making this all a little bit more readable will make the program that much more useful. To do this, I will add an if-else statement. It simply says if the value of num is less than 10, or in other words a single digit, print 3 spaces to the console. If the value of num is greater than 10, or in other words a 2-digit number, print 2 spaces to the console. This will take care of the formatting of the data output to the console. Feel free to stare at this for a bit to get a good understanding of what it is doing. Running the program, you can see we get something that looks more like a multiplication table, and something that can be used in the same manner as one. For example, if we want to know what 9 times 9 is, we can go to the 9 on top and trace the column down until we get to the row where the other 9 is. And the value at this point on the chart is the product of 9 times 9, 81. This program executed a total of 100 iterations of various loops. This number can be easily determined by multiplying the total number of outer loop iterations by the total number of inner loop iterations. It is especially important to appropriately set nested loop parameters, as you can see how the total amount of executions can rapidly increase, and when CPU intensive tasks are added to this, you have the potential for disaster.